The Origins of Amadioha. The lightning didn't just strike him, it swallowed him whole. They stood frozen, watching as the boy they once called Kamalu vanished in a blinding flash. His scream was drowned by the deafening roar of the skies. When the lights faded, he was no longer there, at least, not in the way they knew him. What remained was a being they couldn't name, but could only bow before. To understand how Kamalu became Amadioha, you have to know who he was before the storm. He wasn't just some lonely village boy talking to the skies, he was one of them, part of an inseparable trio. A friendship only a few experienced in their lifetime. Part 1, The Boy Who Chased the Sky. Kamalu was born under a troubled sky, the day thick with clouds that never rained. His mother,
Ezine,
often told him the tale of how he came into the world screaming like a thunderclap. The sky marked you, Kamalu, she'd say, her tone both proud and wary. Their home stood at the edge of
Umokwe,
where farmland met the forest. His father, a hunter, was a stern man, rarely home and even rarer with praise. You're too soft, he'd scold when Kamalu hesitated to kill a goat for their rituals. But Kamalu hated the sight of blood, preferring to lose himself in the rhythm of his mother's stories or the dance of the clouds above. One fateful day, a storm rolled in while his father was away. Kamalu, no more than 9, had wandered too far into the fields chasing a butterfly. As the winds howled and the first crack of thunder split the sky, he froze. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck the earth mere feet from where he stood. When he awoke, the butterfly was gone, and a peculiar scar ran across his palm, a thin, jagged line like a lightning bolt.
Ezine,
He believed it was a mark of destiny. The gods have plans for you, my son, they have marked you, she said. His father was less optimistic. The boy will bring us misfortune, he frowned. His eyes weary. The whispers in the village began soon after. Strange things seemed to happen around Kamalu. Animals grew restless in his presence, storms often gathered when he was angry or sad. Children avoided him, calling him
Ujunwa,
the weird child. Isolated and confused, Kamalu took to climbing the hill near the yam barn, where he could speak to the heavens without judgment. One day, as he sat watching the clouds, he heard a rustling behind him. Turning, he saw a girl, a striking figure with bright eyes and a mischievous smile. "You talk to the sky?" she asked. Kamalu flushed. "It listens better than people do." "Well," she said while smiling and sitting beside him, "I listen too." Njidika was born with a clever mind and a sharper tongue. Her mother, a midwife, often said Njidika was smarter than anyone had a right to be. But intelligence came at a price. The other children, jealous of her quick wit and beauty, avoided her. Her father, a trader, adored her. He often brought her books and trinkets from distant villages, fueling her curiosity. But tragedy struck when a caravan her father traveled with was ambushed by bandits. He never returned. Njidika hardened after that. She threw herself into learning, spending hours with the elders, absorbing their stories and wisdom. She also became fiercely independent, unwilling to rely on anyone for anything. One day, while walking home from the market, she heard a commotion near the hill. A group of boys surrounded a skinny, dark-haired boy, Kamalu. "You think you're better than us, boy," one sneered, shoving him. Kamalu didn't fight back, his gaze fixed on the sky as if willing it to intervene. Njidika pushed through the boys. "Leave him alone." The boys turned, startled. "Stay out of this, Njidika." The biggest one,
Azubike,
said, dismissing her. "Or what?" she challenged, her tone icy. The boys hesitated, then scattered under her fierce glare. Kamalu looked at her, surprised. "You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did," she said. "But next time, try standing up for yourself." He smiled faintly. "Maybe if you teach me." Someone laughed from a distance. "A girl should teach you. I think you should be talking to me." "And who are you?" Njidika asked. "My name is
Ofodili,
but most people call me."
Ofo,
"I meant who are you to just stand around and not help?" "Meh. It was obvious he didn't need my help. You saw how unbothered he was about them, didn't you?"
Ofo,
replied, shrugging his shoulders.
Ofo,
Was the kind of boy people noticed. Tall and broad-shouldered even as a child, he grew up in a household of laughter and generosity. His mother
Adeze,
ran the largest palm wine stall in the village, her booming voice a fixture in the market square. His father, a blacksmith, was a quiet man with a soft spot for animals. Though
Ofo,
he inherited his father's strength, he had his mother's heart. He was always helping someone, carrying firewood for the elders or chasing goats out of vegetable patches. His kindness gained him his popularity among the villagers. It is not often you see a huge boy with such a soft kindness to him. Kamalu and Njidika, now teenagers, had been friends since they were children, each bringing something unique to their bond. Kamalu, quiet and thoughtful, had an awkwardness to him that made you feel both safe and uneasy. Ofa was the group's brawn, a handsome young man with a heart as big as his broad shoulders. Njidika, the most beautiful girl in the village, was the brain of the group, with a wit that could rival any elders, always ready with a plan, and, though she'd never admit it, she harbored a secret crush on Kamalu. Together, they were unstoppable. There was one day, years before the drought, when their bond was tested by Azubike, the village bully. He had made a sport of tormenting everyone, his strength and size ensuring no one dared challenge him. That is, until the trio decided enough was enough. It was during the preparations for the Yam Festival, a time when the village square buzzed with excitement. Azubike's latest victim was a poor potter whose wares he had smashed for amusement. As the potter gathered the shards, Kamalu turned to his friends, his eyes glinting with mischief. Azubike needs to be humbled, he said. Njidika smirked. I was just thinking the same. A plan already building in her head. All right, gentlemen, this plan I have will happen on the festival day. Ofa, you be the mosa. Kamalu, you distract him with your big mouth. And I'll come with the big finish. She said with her arms open wide. Ofa grinned. Big mouth. That's rich coming from the person who talks even in her sleep. Kamalu said, jokingly annoyed at Njidika. Excuse me. My mouth is perfectly sized for this plan. Plus, it's not the size, it's how you use it. Njidika rolled her eyes. Okay, let's focus. Any questions? Took you long enough to ask that. Ofa said, his eyes grinning. We need to take Azubike down before he scares the Yam Festival guest away. So during. Her voice faded away. Their plan took shape during the most important day of the festival. Azubike had gone too far. During a wrestling match at the festival, he humiliated a smaller boy, pinning him to the ground and refusing to let him go. The boy sobbed while the crowd laughed nervously, unwilling to challenge. Azubike then strutted like a king, ready to humiliate any other opponent that challenged him. As another match began, Kamalu wove through the crowd, his voice loud and mocking. Azubike, they say you're strong, but I saw you lose a fight to a goat last market day. Should we call it for a rematch, instead? Ofa, pretending to overhear, added, I heard the goat was blind, too. The crowd erupted in laughter. Azubike's face darkened with rage, and he abandoned his march to charge at Kamalu. But Kamalu was quick, dodging with exaggerated movements that made the villagers cheer even louder. Meanwhile, Njidika secretly greased the wrestling arena with palm oil just when Kamalu distracted Azubike. As Azubike lunged at Kamalu, he slipped and his massive frame crashed to the ground. Before he could recover, Ofa tackled him expertly, picking him up and slamming him in front of the roaring crowd. This knocked Azubike out instantly. Njidika sauntered over, her smirk unshakable. Gentlemen, I believe our work here is done. Ofa laughed. Remind me never to make you angry, Njidika. Kamalu bowed dramatically. All hail Njidika, queen of traps and slippery plots. Oh, stop. You'll make me blush, she said, grinning. But yes, you should absolutely fear me, she said while making a funny scary face. I could have taken him down myself, you know, she said, smirking. But it was fun watching you do it. Ofa grinned. Next time, I'll let you have a turn. That day, for the first time, Azubike was silenced, and the trio became legends in the eyes of the villagers. It was a small victory, but it cemented their bond. They weren't just friends, they were a team, each trusting the other with their lives. Over the next few years, as Kamalu, Njidika, and Ofa bond grew stronger, but the land seemed to grow weaker. What began as sporadic dry seasons evolved into a relentless drought. The sky turned from a comforting blue to an oppressive, empty gray, withholding rain like a tax collector clutching gold. The village of once a lush paradise of thriving yams and flowing rivers, slowly withered. The crops that had once sprouted eagerly from the soil now cooled and crumbled under the sun's unyielding glare. Livestock, the lifeblood of many families, began to perish, first the chickens, then the goats, and finally even the hardy cattle. The rivers receded into cracked, dusty scars on the earth, their beds littered with the skeletons of fish and the forgotten tools of fishermen. Children no longer laughed as they played in the streams, instead, they sat quietly under trees that had long stopped bearing fruit, their faces gaunt with hunger. Kamalu often found himself staring at the sky, now a pale and pitiless expanse. He could feel its weight pressing down on him, suffocating and accusatory. Each day without rain felt like a personal failure, though he didn't know why. He began climbing the hill more frequently, seeking answers in the clouds that refused to speak. Days blurred into weeks, each more unbearable than the last. The heat was relentless, an invisible predator that haunted both body and mind. It clawed at their throats, leaving them parched and delirious. The air shimmered with a mirage-like haze, and the ground burned their feet, even through their sandals. At night, the trio would huddle together, the oppressive silence broken only by the occasional wail of a starving child or the distant howl of a wild animal. Njidika, ever the pragmatist, became sharp-tongued and distant. She spent her days devising plans to find water or trap what few animals still roamed the dying forest. Her wit, once playful, now had a cutting edge. One evening, as the three sat by a dying fire, Njidika snapped at Kamalu. "Stop staring at the sky like a fool. It's not going to answer you." Kamalu flinched, her words hitting like a slap. I feel like there's something I'm supposed to do." "Something you're supposed to do," she scoffed, her voice rising. "Do you think you're special, Kamalu? That the drought is waiting for you to fix it? We're all suffering, and your staring won't bring the rain." Ever the peacekeeper stepped in. "Njidika, that's enough. We're all tired. And hungry," Njidika added bitterly, rising to leave. "I'll check the traps. You two can keep dreaming." Kamalu clenched his fist but said nothing. Placed a hand on his shoulder. "She doesn't mean it. She's just scared." "I know," Kamalu muttered. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Njidika's words might hold a grain of truth. Kamalu had begun dreaming of storms, violent, electric tempests that shook the earth since the start of the drought. The dreams always started the same. The world around him would spring to life, vibrant and lush. The sun warm, casting golden rays over fields of tall, swaying crops. Children played in the riverbanks, their laughter, a sweet melody that filled the air. Villagers bustled with joy, their clay pots brimming with water from streams that sang as they flowed. The aroma of roasted yams and fresh herbs wafted from the market square, where traders haggled with good-natured smiles. Kamalu stood among them, soaking in the beauty of a land at peace. He felt alive, invigorated, as though the drought had never happened. The sky, an endless dome of bright blue, seemed to whisper promises of prosperity. Njidika's laughter rang out as she teased who carried an absurdly large basket of yams to prove his strength. "You're going to crush those before we even cook them," Njidika called, hands on her hips. "And you'll eat them anyway," shot back, grinning. Kamalu chuckled. He felt weightless, carefree, like the boy he had been before the drought tightened its grip on their world. A cool breeze danced through the village, carrying with it the scent of rain. For a moment, everything was perfect. But that particular night, during his dreams, everything changed. Suddenly, the sky darkened. The joyous sounds faded, replaced by silence. The air grew heavy, thick with tension. Kamalu turned toward the horizon, his heart sinking as he saw storm clouds boiling like an angry beast awakened from slumber. Lightning slashed across the heavens, like jagged fingers tearing the sky apart. The once playful breeze transformed into a howling wind, scattering leaves and overturning pots. Villagers screamed as the earth beneath their feet cracked open, splitting the fields and swallowing the crops that were so abundant a second before. Kamalu stood frozen, unscathed yet powerless. Rain poured from the sky in torrents, but instead of nourishing the land, it burned it. The water hissed as it hit the ground, steam rising in ghostly tendrils. The children who had been playing in the riverbanks now ran for their lives, their laughter replaced by cries of fear. Ova dropped his basket of yams, his face pale with terror. "Kamalu! What's happening?" he shouted, but his voice was drowned by the roar of the storm. Njidika reached for Kamalu, her eyes wide with desperation. "Do something. You're at the center, this is your storm." Kamalu looked down at his hands, now glowing faintly, streaks of electricity crackling across his palms. The earth quaked beneath him, and the villagers' voices rose in unison, a haunting mix of anger and despair. "You caused this," they shouted. "You brought the drought upon us." "No." Kamalu tried to scream, but the word died in his throat. He turned in every direction, searching for an answer, for a way to stop the chaos, but the storm raged on, indifferent to his panic. He felt the ground give way beneath him, and in an instant, he was falling, tumbling through darkness. The storm howled in his ears, the villagers' accusations echoing like thunder. Then, Kamalu found himself in the middle of a field, bare and dry caused by the drought, as he looked around. In the silence, a figure emerged. Clad in a tattered, shimmering cloak, the figure glided toward him, its face never settling into a single shape. One moment, it bore the lined face of an elder, the next, the soft features of a child. Its voice, when it spoke, was a haunting blend of many tones, both male and female, young and old. "You cannot run from this, Kamalu," the figure said, its eyes glinting like storm clouds. "The drought is no accident. It is a test, and a warning." Kamalu's throat was dry, his voice caught in his chest. He wanted to speak, to demand answers, but all he managed was a hoarse whisper, "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, as if amused. "I am no one and everyone. I am what you fear and what you seek. Look to the hill, child of the storm. There, your path begins." The figure raised an arm, pointing toward the hill where Kamalu often climbed to seek solace. As he turned to follow its gaze, a deafening clap of thunder shattered the dreamscape. Kamalu jolted awake, his heart pounding like a war drum. The world around him was dark, save for the faint glow of the moon casting long shadows over the land. His throat was parched, his body drenched in sweat that clung to him like a second skin. As he sat up, trying to calm his ragged breathing, he froze. He was no longer in his hut. The familiar walls, the scent of his mother's dried herbs, none of it surrounded him. Instead, he found himself halfway up the hill, seated on the cool, dew-kissed grass. "What? How did I get here?" he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. The hill was eerily quiet, the village below shrouded in darkness. A faint breeze stirred the leaves, carrying with it the acrid smell of drought-stricken land. Kamalu's mind raced. He didn't remember leaving his mat, much less climbing the hill in the dead of night. Above him, the sky stretched endlessly, cloudless and cold. Yet, as he looked up, he saw something strange, a faint glimmer, like the first hint of lightning in a distant storm. His scarred palm throbbed painfully, and he clenched it into a fist, the dream still vivid in his mind. The figure's words echoed in his ears, "Look to the hill. There, your path begins." He rose unsteadily, his legs trembling beneath him. The hill loomed higher above, and with it, a growing sense of unease. Kamalu felt as if unseen eyes were watching, waiting. "I'm not dreaming anymore," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Yet, the truth of the statement chilled him to the bone. As he descended from the hill, the first streaks of dawn painted the horizon in pale golds and pinks, casting long shadows over the cracked earth. By the time he reached the village, Kamalu's decision was clear. He would leave in search of a solution. He walked towards the village square. As he headed back home, he found
Ofo
and Njidika waiting for him, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. "Kamalu," Njidika began, her voice unusually soft, "you've been acting strange these past few weeks. You disappear at night, and now you're wandering around at dawn looking like you've seen a ghost." She crossed her arms, her sharp eyes scanning his face. "What's going on?" Kamalu hesitated, but he knew he couldn't lie to them. These two had been his closest friends for as long as he could remember. If anyone deserved to know the truth, it was them. "I've been having dreams," he admitted, his voice low. "Dreams of storms. They started when the drought began. At first, I thought they were just nightmares, but they feel real. Last night, I woke up on the hill without any idea how I got there. And then, there was this," he paused, struggling to find the words. "This figure. It spoke to me. It said the drought is no accident, that it's a test. And that my path begins on the hill." Ova frowned, his brows knitting together. "You're saying the drought isn't just bad luck? That someone, or something, is causing it?" Njidika's eyes widened, but instead of fear, there was curiosity in her gaze. "And this figure, what did it look like? What else did it say?" "It wasn't human," Kamalu replied, goosebumps covering the surface of his skin as he recalled the memory. "It kept changing. One moment, it looked like an elder, the next, like a child. But its voice was many voices. It told me to look for answers. I have to leave the village. There's no other way."
Ofo
His expression darkened. "Vive. Alone. That's madness, Kamalu. You can't just walk into the unknown by yourself. Who knows what's out there?" "I don't have a choice," Kamalu insisted, his tone firm. "The drought isn't going to end unless I do something. The dreams are leading me somewhere, and if I ignore them," he trailed off, unwilling to voice the unspoken truth that the drought may consume them all. Njidika stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. If you think we're going to let you go alone, you're more stubborn than I thought. We've faced bullies, angry elders, and wild animals together. This is no different. This is completely different. Kamalu argued. This isn't some wrestling match with
Azubike.
a wild boar running loose in the market. This is serious. It's dangerous. All the more reason you need us, Njidika countered, her eyes fierce. You've seen what the drought has done to the land. You think you'll survive out there alone? No. We are coming with you.
Ofo
Nodded, crossing his muscular arms over his chest. She's right. You need us. And honestly, Kamalu, you might have your quick wit and be good at running your mouth, but you'll probably trip over a root and get eaten by a lion without us. Kamalu couldn't help but let out a short laugh despite the seriousness of the situation.
Ofo
You really know how to inspire confidence. Njidika smirked. He's not wrong, and I'm not about to sit here and watch you live on some grand quest while we rot in this dying village. You might have had the dream, Kamalu, but we're in this together. If the drought is a test, then it's not just your test. It's ours too. Kamalu stared at them both, his chest tightening. He had always known they were loyal, but the depth of their determination in this moment overwhelmed him. For a fleeting second, he considered trying to dissuade them, to convince them to stay behind where it was safer. But as he looked into their eyes, he realized there was no point. All right, he said finally, a small smile tugging at his lips. You win. We'll go together. But don't say I didn't warn you when things get rough. Please, Njidika scoffed, rolling her eyes. You're talking to the woman who has successfully planned our quest. I think I can handle a little rough. And you're talking to the strongest man in
Umokwe. Ofo
added, flexing his arms with a grin. Rough is what I do best. Kamalu shook his head, a genuine laugh escaping him this time. Fine. We'll leave at first light tomorrow. But no complaints when we're sleeping on rocks or eating roots. Deal, Njidika said, her tone light but her expression serious. They both walked Kamalu back home and met a mob of villagers at Kamalu's family hut. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes sunken with desperation. You're the boy of the sky, one of the elders said, his voice trembling. You're cursed. That's why the rain won't come. Kamalu's mother, Ezin, stepped protectively in front of him. Leave my son alone. He's just a boy. But the villagers weren't convinced. He's not just a boy, another shouted. He's marked. Look at the scar on his hand. Kamalu raised his palm, staring at the jagged line that seemed to glow faintly under the harsh sun. Fear and shame churned within him. Before the mob could advance,
Ofo
and Njidika moved to stand by his side. Anyone who wants Kamalu will have to go through us,
Ofo
said, his broad frame casting a protective shadow. The villagers hesitated, their anger dimming in the face of
Ofo's
imposing figure. Njidika, ever the strategist, spoke next. If Kamalu is cursed, then so are we. So are you all. Do you really want to start this fight against yourselves and your people? The mob began to disperse as they lowered their weapons, muttering curses under their breath. But the encounter left Kamalu shaken. Kamalu knew that this was not going to be the last encounter he would have with the villagers if he did nothing. The drought was more than a natural disaster. It was alive in his dreams, clawing at his consciousness with every passing night. Each vision whispered that the earth was angry and the deafening silence a plea he could not ignore. He had to act to find answers and to uncover what lay behind the drought. This has to end, he murmured to himself, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at the edges of his mind. If I don't do something, there won't be a village left to save, he said to his friends. The next morning, his resolve hardened as the three stood in silence for a moment at the foot of the hill, the enormity of what lay ahead settling over them. While staring out at the parched land behind and the large rock in front with their various traveling items in their hands and firmly wrapped around their bodies. The drought had tested their village, but now it would test their bond. Together, they would face the unknown, and whatever answers Kamalu's dream sought to reveal.